We made it.
Yeehaw! We're
So
good.
now you've seen the whole class, and some of you have some more questions, so we want to go into a few of those. Just want to have a quick reminder, if you're asking about a pattern, there's not a full pattern with the PDF instructions, but the class was so easy to follow. Go back and watch that video as many times as you like. The printable does have the supply list for what you'll need, and as a reminder, my favorite part, the coloring page, so you can try out your own fabrics, and then the labels that Courtney used to make sure she kept those fabrics straight. So there's a couple questions we're going to dive into. One of them is from our first Q&A before the class. You couldn't see the fabrics very well, so I just wanted to show those off one more time before we get started. And now that you've seen the class, kind of how those work in the fabrics. So this is our groovy group.
Yep, so pretty.
And so it would be something where you could use this as the border and have that separation.
Right. Yep.
And then this one would make an awesome quilted valor. So I might actually flip this around and use this as the fabric D for the starburst, since it's the brighter color.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'm a magpie for the shiny. So this one is actually probably my favorite group. But those fall colors. And for those of you who were asking about these, we do have links in the description to all these. You can make this in so many colorways. And I'm sure some of you have mentioned, like, I have the perfect jelly roll for this. I have the perfect fabric. I've started one of these. Cannot wait to see yours.
Oh, I can't wait. That's the best part about teaching classes, seeing everybody's.
Right?
Yeah.
And then some folks have been mentioning the Christmas fabrics. This is a little less traditional Christmas line. It's called Glow. And then this one is actually not part of the line, this bottom one. But you can also mix and match lines. You don't have to stay in the same collection. You can mix and match all your fabrics. There's no quilt police. So I wanted to show you all of those for those of you who are asking. And then I wanted to start with, let's jump right into questions. Jean Nelson said, please verify the pinning of the seams again, please, please. Seems to be the most important part. Thanks.
All right, so let me put my real glasses on.
Fair.
Okay. So I have,
some of this away.
let me move that out of the way here. Okay. So I've got 2 strips here. These would not what you would be sewing together, but it's just 2 that I cut. Yes, my seams, there was another question about the seams going in the same direction, or do they go opposite direction? They are going the same direction.
And so let's hold those up for the camera there.
So they will both be going down. Those seams are going down.
So they're not ever really going to nest.
No, they're not, and that's cool. That's all good.
It's groovy.
It is groovy. Sorry, pardon moi. I forgot we were 60 stuff. Yeah.
So, and I want to point out, we also recommend having one of these smaller 2.5-inch rulers. A lot of times people get this ruler, and I maybe have gotten my first templates and didn't know you had to peel off the paper. So when you do that, suddenly it actually works.
Yeah, you can see through it. It works a lot better. And then there's always a little piece. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So in the video I was showing, so this is my first piece. So I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch seam on here. And so you can see it on camera, I am using a micron pen. Don't use the micron pen. I'm just using the micron pen so you can see it on camera.
Right.
Okay? So I'm going to mark here, and I'm going up next to that. And I'm just kind of doing that line and pointing it right where my pin's going to go.
And I'm actually going to invite our cameraman to come in even closer so you can see that. So bear with us, it's gonna move a little bit. So you're 1/4 inch from the edge, and then you're marking right over that seam.
Yep.
Okay.
And on this, I'm going to go ahead and mark on the yellow, and that's okay. So I can see right where that 1/4 inch is. And then since this piece is going to be flipped over on top, I want to see where I'm pinning from this side. So I'm actually going to mark the wrong side of this piece here. And I'm going to mark right on my seam allowance, right where my stitching is. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, and just before you get into pinning, just another couple of quick questions. Lake 53 says, I'm very allergic to scents. Does the starch you prefer have a scent? And
this does not.
No.
No,
so
this does not.
This from Faultless has no scent. Okay, so then as we have marked, and again, you'll have used a pencil or something that's going to erase itself so not to be seen. You're not going to use
Correct.
the Sharpie as clearly as possible.
Yes.
But the joke is don't use the Sharpie.
Yes, please, yes, don't use the Sharpie. Please don't.
Okay.
So I am going to go in at this mark on my first piece there with my pin, right where the stitching is. And then I am going to find where the mark is on the second piece there. And I'm going to go in. It's kind of hard because I'm trying to show you guys, but I'm going to go in right where that seam meets that other seam at the 1/4 inch, and that's where I'm going to pin, okay? And I'm going to hold that pin straight up and down, and I'm going to leave it there, okay? And I am going to hold it. I'm going to hold it between my fingers on the bottom, just like that. So the pin's in between, can't move. And then I'm going to take another pin, and I'm going to pin right in front of the pin, and take as little bite as possible. So you don't want to get a whole lot of fabric in there, because again, that'll manipulate the fabric. At that point, I can pull this one out and put another pin in, or I can hold it in there and move on. And let's show that again. So
hang on one second.
Yes.
I'm going to ask, Lynn, do you think you could come even closer, or maybe Courtney, we can even kind of
I can
hold
lean
to
over
the camera?
Yep.
Because this part, it is the tricky part to show you.
It is.
But it's not tricky to do.
Right. It's just awkward.
It's just awkward to show you this way. So.
And we don't have our overhead camera that we normally would have, so
That's
that
right.
doesn't help.
Okay.
So I'm going in through there, and I'm picking up right where, I'm trying to do it so. And I'm going right through where that mark is there. And I'm going to hold that in place.
Can you guys, are you showing the side? Just a hair.
And then pin there. And sometimes I'll leave that pin in and pin another one. Okay, there's two there. I pull that out, and then I use it to start my next one. Okay. Sometimes I use two, sometimes I don't. Just kind of whatever I'm feeling.
Okay.
If I'm feeling like my points are matching up okay, I only use one. But if I'm struggling sometimes.
Yeah.
So we all have those days.
Right.
You know.
All right, so I'm going to try one more time. So as you walked me through it, what I had to do was take this mark that you can see here, and this mark that you can see on the yellow here, and I'm lining those two pieces up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go straight down, right at that thread line, and I'm going to go straight through, right at that thread line, right at that seam.
Perfect.
Almost. I'm going to not stab myself. That's going to be great. And this part was the part that, like, was this aha moment for me. So tell me, guys, was this an aha for you? But when you hold this, as you're saying, like, with your two fingers here, to hold this in place before taking that small bite, that's why it doesn't move.
Right.
And that's where the magic is. So then as we take this next piece, that tiniest of bites, without biting my finger, was like a huge aha for me, right? So this tip was fantastic. And then I think the other two tips that were just really fantastic were the marking itself. And again, we said, don't use a Sharpie. Do use something that's going to iron away. And then the starch was important because you don't want this to stretch, especially as you're working through things. So because there is stretch to the bias, you don't want that to stretch. You want to have that starch in place.
Right.
So those are our biggies as far as the big tips. So I want to jump into some of the other questions. Steph wants to know, can you use background fabric as one of your strips to make the outside points float?
Absolutely.
That would be so pretty. So like if you had this as the background, then this outside sparkler would really kind of float.
That's fun.
That would be
great idea.
Show us that one. I want to see that
one. I love that.
So glad you guys have enjoyed this class, and that it's a lot easier than you thought it was, right? Like, it's totally approachable. When you do these three things, it's going to make it just so much fun to make. We have a couple of other questions. The finished size of the quilt with this border is roughly 50 inches square.
Correct.
But you can do whatever borders you want. So that's why we don't have an exact measurement for you. You may decide go for a great big border or several borders, or, and like this one, where you had an inner border and then an outer border, changes the size and the look.
Yep.
And you've even done a really cool binding on this one.
I did do a flanged binding. I thought that looked great. So the flange binding is this little green piece here that's kind of loose.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's, Missouri Star has a final stitch episode with Natalie that shows you exactly how to do the flange binding. So if that's your jam, check that out. One thing that stands out for me on this too, Courtney, is like the quilting itself is gorgeous and it really stands out on this black background. So how did you go about picking the quilting and the threads for these?
Well, this one, the one behind me, you can see the quilting just kind of fades in, and that's what I wanted there. So I picked a darker fabric that kind of matched the background. On this one, I kind of wanted to play, and I believe I told the quilter, I said, pick out one of those greens or a lime green and go for it. And I thought it was so much fun on the black.
Yeah.
Normally, we've got over 150 patterns for everyone to choose from if you send your quilts into Missouri Star for us to quilt it.
Yes.
This was, I picked, I believe this is called Variety, is the pattern name.
That sounds right. And it's got a variety of stitching.
It does. If you're not sure what pattern you like, you can always put on the request form that it's quilter's choice, so they can choose. Now, if you were to put quilter's choice on the thread color, they would probably not do this color.
Right.
Because
they would probably pick one to blend.
It's pretty bright, and it's probably not normally what people would want. They would want something more subtle, but here I just went for it. It was a lot of fun.
You wanted wild.
So, yeah.
And when you send this into, if you choose to send this into Machine Quilting and you send in Quilter's Choice, we actually did an episode during National Quilting Month back in March where Misty and I took a couple of quilts over to Machine Quilting and had them quilt one with a purple and one with a kind of a steely gray. And it was really interesting to see the color difference and to have the quilters talk through with us why they chose the pattern and why they chose the thread based on that Quilter's Choice option. But when you have something that you want, just throw in those comments. This is what I want. I want it to be green and bright on that black, and
they'll do it.
It's gorgeous.
And you don't have to have it custom long armed. You can do this yourself. I've done them where I've stitched 1/4 of an inch away from all my diamonds.
Oh, I bet that's beautiful.
And it was just very simple. Held it down, and then I actually had a stencil. It was on a snowflake quilt. I did it in blues and whites, and so I had a stencil that I used in the corners of a snowflake. And used iridescent thread, and actually didn't break on me 1,000 times. It was a miracle. And so I did that. So it doesn't have to be overall quilted. You can have fun with this. It's a good size to do on your home machine because it's not very bulky.
Right. It's a size you can see fitting in your home machine and try out some stitches.
Yeah. Have some fun with it.
Go crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I just wanted to show a couple more options that we had, well, I say we, that Courtney has made. And that you can see in the jelly roll version. So she did mention that at the end of the class that this one, of course, that we just showed you is a jelly roll. And then I believe this one.
This one was yardage.
Is yardage. So you can see.
And I love my burst.
Guys,
love how the burst came out in this one.
Look at
with
that.
With that lime green. That was just so fun.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And again, this is the Whimsical Wings collection. They'll be coming soon. So if you love this burst and this fabric, keep an eye out. This will be coming our way very soon.
And notice the background.
Yeah.
So this has the light background.
This has the light background. It has a little bit of a tone to it.
And then let's show the other one again because we're using the turquoise background. And it makes it look totally different. And I know you've seen it, but
right, totally different look.
But that's what a background does. It just gives you a totally different look to your quilt.
And so it's the Scrappier Star on a more solid background, and it's just a completely different look. So go crazy, have fun with this. We can't, again, like I can't say it enough. We can't wait to see what you make when you make the Lone Star.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have these comfy pieces here, to James with Love wants to know, have you ever made a larger Lone Star quilt, and how do you figure out how much fabric you need for the different sizes of the Lone Star?
So I have made the 6 color, so it's the same exact process. How about that? Same exact way I do it. I use 6 strips.
So you add E and F.
Add E and F, and I believe it was still 1/3 of a yard of 6 because you still only need 2 strip sets of each one. And then for the backgrounds, how I do that when I'm trying to create a different size, what I'll do is I will get my diamonds made, and I'll put up some diamonds on my wall, and then I will get paper, just regular copy paper or newspaper. I'll tape it together. I'll say, this looks like where these two meet. I'll measure that and see what size square that is, and I'll make a square out of my paper about an inch larger than that, and put it up there and say, okay, this might work. And then I usually add an inch with my fabric and then cut it in half down. Because I like having that floating again.
Right.
And then I do the same thing with the pieces that are in between the tops there.
Yeah.
And I'll get a square and kind of play with it a little bit until I get it. I don't cut any fabric until I get done playing with my template, my fancy
Very
templates.
good tip.
So
Very good tip. So yes, so Melinda, yes, we can make it bigger. That's one of the ways to do that. If you're using narrower strips, Jackie at DB Stitch Art wants to know, use narrower strips, how does it affect the offset and width of cut strips from the strip sets? So is your 2.5 offset because they're 2.5-inch strips?
Yes.
So if you did a 2-inch strip, you would do like a 2-inch offset. You get
and
really
then you'd
tiny.
cut them 2 inches wide. So you're going to cut your sub cuts at the width of your fabric. If you use 1.5-inch strips, you're going to cut your little diamond 1.5 inches.
And if you go big, beware. I've done one of these that's I thought, well, 4-inch strip won't be that much bigger, and it's a lot bigger, you guys. Quilt math can be deceptive.
Yeah.
So when I did that, it was 4 inches and a 4-inch offset, and it was quite a bit bigger quilt. So you can absolutely do that. Let's see. Would fork pins work? Katie Terakami wants to know.
Sure.
Okay.
You could use a fork pin. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Elisa Topia, I'm sorry, I might be butchering your name, I apologize. I made a miniature version of this, and the center was a bit wonky compared to your display sample. Am I correct that your strips converge in the center? Or is the center a square? Is the center seam nested? So let me take these away here, make some more room. So they do come together, and when you're putting your quadrants together, there is a little bit of bulk in that center. And the truth is, when you make things smaller, the bulk feels bulkier faster, right? Because your 1/4-inch seam is 1/4 of an inch diamond. It's 1/8 of a 2-inch diamond. Like that exponential math is the deceptive part. So the bulk will feel bulkier just by virtue of it being a smaller piece, and it will feel less bulky the bigger the pieces are.
And you can make sure at that point, if you're having bulky issues, all these can be pressed open.
Right.
When you sew your diamonds together, you can sew those open, and that will help that in there. And then when I sew my top to my bottom, I will baste, using a larger stitch, I will baste across the middle to hold that in place.
So
and
it
then
doesn't
flip it
wiggle
open
on
and make sure it looks good and it's laying flat. I normally don't start at one end and just hope it all comes out.
Gotcha.
I'll kind of baste it and make sure it looks okay, and then I'll use a regular stitch.
Okay, great tips. All right, when you cut your strips at an angle, I'm left-handed and struggle with angles. Can you change the angle to straight? So, Connie, this is a great question. Sometimes we get these questions around the right-handed, left-handed. So, Courtney and I are both right-handed, so we're going to kind of
She can just
cut that
start
way.
from the other end of the strip.
So you can either cut from the other end of the strip and kind of offset them that way. That works great. Or you can turn the whole strip and cut this way. Let me see if that makes sense. So let me pull up a strip here. So Courtney you cut horizontally.
I cut this way
Right.
and across, but if you're left-hander, you can just start at this end and work your way back.
Right.
Yep.
And if you do want to turn it this way, you can, and use your left hand to cut this way, and that will work.
Yes.
So absolutely work with what works best for your brain, always. So we want to make sure that it's comfortable and that it's not going to be a dangerous cut for
Correct.
you. Always
You
make
never
sure
want to
it's
do this. Please don't ever do this. Don't cut over your
Please,
hand.
please, please, no. Okay. So several questions about why don't we iron all the seams open. So let's talk about that for a second.
I personally, there are many schools of thought on this too. I think the seams are sturdier when they're pressed to one side. Plus, I don't think I'd want to quilt this in the ditch, but maybe I do. So I don't want to have that. You don't want to press your seams open if you're going to stitch in the ditch, because that will weaken the seam. I find that I don't need them pressed open, I guess. There's not a reason to, so I just tend to. If you find, and to me, when you're pinning, let's go back to the pinning of the strips, the pinning of your diamonds.
Yeah.
I like having that bulk there. I can feel kind of where those seams are. They're still very flat because we used our starch, right? So they're not nesting. They don't, one is not getting in the way of the other. So I just like them pressed to one side. If you want to try to press them open and do it pressed open, please do. Like, this is your thing. If you would rather press it open, press it open. I'm just suggesting things. So,
Right.
So we all have the ways we like to do things.
And the other thing that's hard to show you without being able to have you put your hands on it is that when you can feel that seam, as you're talking about, when you can feel the seams, you have a better sense of kind of where things are then lining up or locking up when they're pressed to one side. When they're pressed open, they're even flatter, which has its benefits, but also makes it trickier to feel where it needs to be. So that's one of those spots.
Right.
Okay, so then we have, yes, this live chat will be up. And then if you wanted to add 6 fabrics to make a bigger star, how do you figure out the square sizes for the background? So we did talk about that for a minute.
Yep.
There is also good call out that there is a block magazine that came out in August. So our most recent issue is Volume 8, Issue 4.
Correct.
Got that right?
Yes.
And so the that block issue also has a bunch of your tips and tricks for Lone Stars in it, and there's a Lone Star pattern in there as well. So if you now can't get enough of Lone Stars, that's where to go for some even more details.
And Susan put a wonderful, in Block Magazine, a great border option.
Yeah,
and
it's
there she
really
did a piece
pretty.
border on 2 corners. It's fabulous. It's a really neat quilt.
I really enjoy seeing, and that's why we love to have you share with us too. Like, if you use that hashtag MSQC show and tell so we can see your quilts, getting inspired by other quilters is one of like the best parts. So I get to learn from you, I get to see what you do, I get to see how you think, and spark something new for me to try. And so love to see that from you guys as well. Yep. Kathy Pearson wants to know, why does the jelly roll come out scrappy? I would like to use a jelly roll to make the burst style. It seems like it would work. Just use 4 colors instead of all of them.
She wants to use 4 colors out of the jelly roll?
4 colors out of the jelly roll.
If there are enough of those colors, because you need a total of, I cut mine into 10-inch strips. Let's see, you would need, what do you need, 2, 4, 6, 8. So you need 8 strips of one color, and that's kind of hard to get in a jelly roll.
Could you get away with cutting a jelly roll into 2 20-inch strips like this?
Oh, yeah, and you would cut them down anyway.
Yeah,
you would cut them down the same way. And actually, with my jelly roll quilt, so it's even more scrappy, I cut them into 10-inch strips.
That's right.
And so I used almost every piece in my jelly roll quilt because I cut them even smaller, so I had them even scrappier.
Gotcha.
But
so that was like an intentionally scrappy.
it was intentionally really scrappy.
Okay. So you probably could, if you have the right colors. Now, they may not be all the same fabric.
Right.
Because there's not usually, like, there may be 8 reds, but not
Correct.
8 of the exact same print. So think about that as
Absolutely.
you're playing with your jelly roll.
Yep.
And show us what you come up with.
Yeah.
Okay. Some great ideas. And it is a beautiful quilt behind us.
Yeah.
Like, I think it turned out really
great.
fun.
Yeah, that was a definite team effort. That was fun.
Let's see, American flag colors, and we showed you one sample that we thought that would be beautiful. Donnell Stevens says, I've never used starch. Does it hurt your iron, and does it leave a residue on your iron? So for the starch
Sometimes it
newbie.
can. Sometimes it can. The one product, and I'm not a Norwex salesperson, but I have a Norwex kitchen rag that's got a little bit of It's from the kitchen. It looks like it has a little bit of silver in it. And all I do is dampen it and put it on the bottom of my iron. I use it at home all the time to get some of the residue off. Now, I haven't noticed a lot of residue. The Faultless product is still fairly new. I haven't noticed any residue from that.
Cool.
But the Faultless that I do have, and other starches that I do have at home, sometimes I do get some buildup on there. But I have not had any problem getting it off. And you can use, of course, test it to make sure it doesn't, but like even the scrubbies you get at the store, you could probably use one of those, like a kitchen scrubby, and get most of it off. Make sure it doesn't scratch the bottom of your iron, but I haven't had any trouble.
And there's a lot of iron cleaners. We carry a couple of them here at Missouri Star too.
Yep.
You just rub a little bit on a towel and then iron that, and all the residue comes off. I may have gotten fusible on my iron before, and it will take that off.
Right.
So they do work really well. The other question again was, we're talking about this Faultless. We love this one, but can you use like the Best Press? It's just not quite as stiff, right?
Yep, the Best Press doesn't get quite as stiff as a starch does. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, guys, we're coming up just on the last couple minutes to be with you today. We want to thank you so much for celebrating Birthday Bash with us from all over the world. It's been so cool to see you tuning in from Germany and South Africa and Australia and Omaha and Kansas City and nearby and far. Thank you so much. Be sure to share with us the quilts that you make. That hashtag MSQC Show and Tell. Drop pictures in our MSQC All-Stars Facebook group. And thank you, Courtney, for making this such a fun and easy project.
Here. Hopefully I'll be back.
Yes.
We'll do this again if you all liked it.
That's right. So let us know. What did you love about the class? What did you want to see more of? Yes. What inspiration would you like to see come to life in another class like this? And drop those in the comments below so that we can follow up with you.
Yep.
So, happy birthday bash.
Yay, happy birthday bash. Thanks for joining us. This was great fun.
This was great.
Fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.